They rejected me at dawn, in front of everyone, and I did not give them the satisfaction of looking away. That is the first thing you should know about that morning, because everything that came after turned on it. I was 21 years old, and I stood in the frost of the gathering circle with the whole of the hollow pack arranged around me in their wolf-grey cloaks, and I let them do it to my face, with my chin level and my hands still at my sides. It is harder than it sounds. The body wants to flinch. The body wants to fold. I had practiced not folding for most of my life, so when the morning came, I was ready for it, in the way you are ready for a cold you have been told to expect, which is to say, not at all, and completely. Cedric stood at the head of the circle, my mate. The word still sat strangely in my mouth even then, the way a borrowed coat sits on shoulders it was not cut for. His wolf had named me when we were children, at a midwinter gathering, and the pack had treated it as settled from that day, the way packs do, a tidy arrangement, the golden sun and the quiet healer's girl, no trouble to anyone. I had not understood, until that frost-bright morning, how much trouble a tidy arrangement can become when the golden sun decides he would prefer a tidier one. I, Cedric of the Hollow, reject the bond my wolf named. He said the words to the circle, not to me. I reject Bryn, daughter of the healer, and I release her from any claim upon this pack. The bond does not break cleanly when it is rejected. I knew that, the way everyone knows a thing they have never felt, as a fact about other people. I learned it then, the way you learn fire. It went through me like cold driven into the marrow, like a hand closing around my breath and refusing to let go. The frost-bright circle tilted, the grey cloak smeared at the edges of my vision. Somewhere very far down, beneath my own ribs, something that had been load-bearing my whole life simply gave way. I felt the bond tear loose, the way you feel a tooth come out. The wrongness of the empty place more than the pain of the leaving. I did not make a sound. I want that on record. I stood in the centre of that circle, while my own body came apart from a wound no one could see, and I did not give the hollow pack the cry it was waiting for. Beside Cedric stood Lady Ingrid, who had wanted to be lunar of this pack since she was old enough to want anything, and who had spent 2 years explaining to anyone who would listen that a healer's daughter with no rank and no dowry was an embarrassment to a man of Cedric's promise. She was smiling. It was a small, private, satisfied smile. The smile of a woman watching a long campaign reach its end exactly as she planned it. And at the head of them all, on the Alpha's stone, stood Wulfric, who ruled the hollow pack and had let his golden son's match be unmade, because Ingrid's family held 3 valleys of good grazing land, and a healer's daughter held nothing he could use. "It is done," Wulfric said. "The bond is dissolved. Bryn of the Hollow is Bryn of the Hollow no longer. She may remain in the Packlands until the spring thaw, as a matter of charity, and then she is no concern of ours. Charity. Until the thaw. They thought they were being generous. I looked at the 3 of them, the golden sun who would not meet my eyes, the noblewoman who would not stop smiling, the Alpha who had sold a bond for grazing land, and I did the only thing left to me that they could not take away. I thanked them. "I am grateful for the years," I said, and my voice came out steadier than I had any right to expect. And for the charity of the Thor, I will not need all of it. Then I turned and I walked out of the gathering circle, through the parting grey cloaks, with the rejection sickness clawing up through me and my legs threatening to fold under me at every step. And I did not let them fold, and I did not look back. I thought no one was watching me who mattered. Someone was. I did not see him. That is the part I have turned over most in the time since. I walked out of my own unmaking, with my eyes fixed on the tree line, and my whole will bent on staying upright, and I never once looked up at the ridge above the gathering circle, where a man had been standing since before the frost burned off, perfectly still, watching every second of it. The Alpha King had seen the whole thing. I would not learn that until much later, but I have since been told, by people who were on the ridge with him, and have no reason to lie to me, that Magnus, Alpha King of the Northern Reach, the wolf they called the Iron Crown, stood on that hill from the first word to the last, and did not move, and did not speak, and that the only thing about him that changed in all that time was the colour of his knuckles where his hands had closed. By the time the sun set that day, the pack that rejected me at dawn had a very serious problem. But I am getting ahead of myself. At dawn, I knew none of it. At dawn, I only knew that I had to get to the tree line before my legs gave out, and that I had nowhere to go once I reached it. I made it to my mother's cottage at the pack's edge. My mother was a healer, and she had died 2 winters before, and I had kept the cottage and her trade because a healer's daughter who can set a bone and break a fever is useful enough that even a pack that despises her rank will let her stay. I went in and I sat down on the cold hearthstone because the chair felt too far, and I let myself shake for exactly as long as it took the kettle to boil, which is the only honest measure of grief I have ever found. Then I made tea, and I started planning how to be gone before the thaw, on my own terms and not theirs. I did not weep. I had learned long ago that a woman who weeps where she can be seen makes her grief into everyone's business. And I had given the hollow pack enough of my business for one lifetime. The first sign that the day was not going to go the way Wulfric intended came at mid-morning in the form of a rider. Not a hollow rider. A rider in black and iron, on a horse worth more than my cottage, who came up the pack road at a pace that scattered the chickens and did not slow until he reached the gathering circle, where the pack was still standing about in the satisfied murmur of people who have witnessed something and want to discuss it. I heard the commotion from my doorway. I did not go down, but the news came up the road faster than the rider had. News travels in a pack, the way smoke travels in a closed room, and by the time the sun was high, I had heard it 3 times from 3 different frightened mouths. The Alpha King was here, in the hollow. He had been here since before dawn, and he was not pleased. I will tell you what I pieced together later, because I was not there for it, and I will not pretend I was. Magnus had come down off the ridge. He had walked into the gathering circle where my rejection had played out 3 hours before, and he had asked Wulfric one question in a voice that the people who heard it described to me afterward in nearly identical words, as though the sound of it had been pressed into them all the same way. He had asked, "Whose voice was that at dawn? the woman who thanked you for her own rejection. And Wulfric, who had sold a bond for grazing land and did not yet understand that he had been seen doing it, had answered that it was no one. A healer's daughter. A rejected Omega of no rank leaving at the thaw. No concern of the crowns. I am told the Alpha King was quiet for a long moment after that. Then he said, in front of the assembled hollow pack, "The grain charter that feeds this pack through the winter is held at my pleasure. I find this morning that my pleasure has changed." And he left them with that, and rode up to the inn at the crossroads, and sent word that he would be remaining in the hollow until certain matters were clarified to his satisfaction. You have to understand what a grain charter is to understand the size of what he had just done. The hollow pack does not grow enough to feed itself through a northern winter. No pack in the Reach does. They eat because the Crown's granaries open to them, by charter, every autumn, and the charter is held at the King's pleasure, renewed each year as a matter of course, so reliably that no one in living memory had thought of it as a thing that could be withheld. He had just reminded them that it could. Over a healer's daughter. Over the voice of a woman thanking a pack for her own unmaking. I did not believe it the first 3 times I heard it. I want to be honest about that. I sat in my mother's cottage and I thought, with the dry, exhausted clarity of a woman who has already had the worst morning of her life, that whatever the Alpha King was doing, it had nothing to do with me. Kings do not rearrange the winter survival of a pack over a rejected Omega. That is not how the world is built. The world is built so that men like Cedric trade up, and women like me leave at the thaw and are grateful for the charity. I was wrong about that. I was wrong about a great many things that day, but I did not learn how wrong until the knock came at my door in the afternoon. If you have ever held your head up through something that should have broken you, only to find out afterward that someone you did not know was watching the whole time, stay with me. What happened after that knock is the part I still cannot entirely explain, and I have had a long time to try. The moon and iron icon is where I keep the rest of these nights, if you want them. I opened the door expecting a patient, a turned ankle, a child's fever, the small ailments that did not stop arriving just because my standing had. The Alpha King was standing in my dooryard. I knew him at once, the way you know weather. He was taller than the doorframe and broader than the road, in black and iron, with a grey wolf fur cloak thrown back off one shoulder, and he had the particular stillness of a man rooms rearrange themselves around. There was a hawk's feather caught in the fur at his collar, grey-barred, the kind that falls from the high ridges. I noticed it before I noticed his face. I have always noticed the small, wrong thing first. He looked at me for a long moment. I looked back, because I had spent the morning learning that I would not look away from anyone ever again, and a king was not going to be the exception. "You are the woman from the circle," he said. "I am Bryn, the healer's daughter. No concern of the crowns, I am told." Something moved at the corner of his mouth. Not a smile. The ghost of where one might go if the man had any practice at it. "You thanked them," he said. "It seemed more useful than the alternatives." "And what were the alternatives?" "Weeping, screaming, folding in the frost where they could all watch me do it." I held the door. I did not invite him in. A king in a healer's dooryard is a scandal that does not improve with hospitality. I have found, Your Grace, that the only thing a pack truly cannot stand to be denied is your collapse. So I did not give them one. I do not see what business that is of yours. I should not have said that last to a king. I knew it as it left my mouth. I had spent every scrap of courtesy I owned that morning, thanking the people who had unmade me, and there was none left over for a man who had ridden into my grief uninvited to remark on how well I had borne it. He did not strike me down. He did the opposite. He went still in the particular way I would come to know meant I had said something he had not expected and did not have a prepared answer for. And the most powerful wolf in the north stood in my dooryard, plainly and visibly at a loss, in front of a rejected Omega who had just told him to mind his own affairs. No, he took his time with it. It is not my business. You are correct. A pause, and then, as though the admission cost him more than the rest of it. I have made it my business regardless. I am aware of the discourtesy. I find I do not care. And he inclined his head, a king to me, and turned and walked back to his horse, and rode away up the road, leaving me holding my own door, and the distinct sense that the floor of the world had shifted under my feet a second time in one day. He had not explained anything. He had not threatened anything. He had ridden to the edge of a pack he was starving over the winter, to stand in a healer's dooryard and tell her she was right, and he did not care. I shut the door. I sat back down on the hearthstone, and for the first time since dawn, the rejection sickness was not the largest thing I was feeling, and I did not know what to do with the fact of that at all. The hawk's feather was on my doorstep the next morning. He had not been back. I had heard no horse, but the grey-barred feather from his collar lay on the worn stone of my doorstep, where a man would have to have crouched to place it, and there was no note, and there was no one in sight. And I stood in the cold, with it in my hand, and understood that the Alpha King of the Northern Reach had come back in the night to leave me a feather, and had not woken a soul doing it. I told myself it had fallen. I told myself the wind. I knew better. There is only one kind of wolf who comes and goes from a healer's dooryard in the dark without waking the dogs, and he does not do it for Omega's leaving at the thaw. The feathers kept coming. That is the part the pack never knew, and I never told them. One on the third morning, weighting down a sprig of the mountain herb that grows only on the high ridges where the hawks nest, the herb my mother had used for the wasting sickness that I had not been able to find since she died. One on the fifth, atop a small wheel of hard cheese, the kind that keeps through a winter, left for a woman who had been told she would not have a pack to feed her through one. He was not courting me with jewels or declarations. He was leaving me the things a person needs to survive a winter alone. And he was leaving them in a way that let me pretend, if I wished, that I had found them myself. I did not pretend for very long. On the sixth day, I left something out for him in return. I am still not sure what possessed me. I left a clay cup of the bitter tea my mother brewed for cold that gets into the joints, the kind of cold a man gets standing still on a ridge from before dawn, with a slip of paper folded under it, in my steady healer's hand. A man who watches from hills will take a chill in them. Drink this. It does not improve the temper, but it loosens the hands. The cup was empty by morning. In its place waited under the feather a slip of paper in a hand I had never seen, but knew at once. Heavy, blunt, the letters pressed hard into the page, as though writing cost him something. My temper is not improved. My hands are unclenched for the first time in 3 days. I did not know which I owed to the tea and which to the company. I find I do not need to know. I read it standing at my window in the grey morning, and I laughed out loud in my empty cottage, a startled, ungraceful sound, the first real laugh since before the frost, because the iron crown of the North had just admitted, on a slip of paper, through a closed door, that a healer's daughter had unclenched his hands, and somehow that undid more of my grief than any apology from Cedric ever could have. So that is how it went. For a span of days I did not count carefully, and have since wished I had. He did not summon me. He could have. He was the king, and I was within his pleasure, as surely as the grain charter was. Instead, he left me feathers and the makings of a winter, and I left him bitter tea and bare lines, and through that strange, slow exchange, I came to know a man the North did not. The North knew the Iron Crown, the wolf who had held the reach for 9 years and never lost a challenge, whose pride was a wall no one had found the top of. I came to know the man behind the wall, a man who had ruled alone because his pride had never once permitted him to want a thing he could be refused. A man for whom the most terrifying thing in the world was not a challenger, but a closed door he had no right to open. I came to understand, slowly, that I had been wrong about him in the dooryard. I had thought him arrogant, a king who rearranged a pack's winter on a whim and did not care. He was not arrogant. He was a proud man who had felt something on a ridge at dawn that his pride had no defence against, and who was for the first time in 9 years badly out of his depth, and trying not to let it show. The pack, of course, knew none of this. The pack knew only that the Alpha King had come to the Hollow over the rejection of a healer's daughter and was withholding their winter charter, and that this had to be fixed, and that the obvious way to fix it was to fix me. Lady Ingrid came to my cottage on the 8th day. She came alone, which should have warned me, because Ingrid did nothing alone that could be done with an audience. She came in her good fur, and she sat in my mother's chair without being asked, and she looked around my cottage with the expression of a woman pricing a thing she intends to discard. "You will go to the king," she said, "and you will tell him you bear the Hollow no grudge, that the rejection was just, that you go willingly at the thaw, that there is no wrong here for the crown to right. You will lift whatever spell you have put on him, and you will release the charter, and then you will leave, tonight, not at the thaw. And I will see you are given enough silver to be comfortable, 3 valleys away, where no one knows your face." "I have put no spell on anyone." "I do not care what you call it." She set a small purse on my table. It was heavy. "A king does not starve a pack over an omega for no reason. Whatever the reason is, you are it. And you will undo it, because if you do not—" She stopped and smoothed her fur, and chose her next words the way a person chooses a knife. "Bryn, think. If the king wanted you, truly, he would have claimed you in the circle at dawn. He did not. He has not. He leaves you to sit in this cottage while he holds a whole pack hostage over a feeling he is too proud to act on. Men like him do not claim women like you. They are diverted by you for a season, and then their pride remembers itself, and they go home, and they leave behind exactly the wreckage he is building here. The kindest thing you could do for him, and for the children of this pack who will go hungry over your pride, is to release him from it and go. It was a good knife. I will give her that. She had found the one place I was undefended. Not vanity, not fear, but the thing I had been telling myself in the dark for 8 days. That a proud king could not truly want a rejected Omega. That I was a diversion. That the wreckage in the hollow was being built on a feeling that would not last the winter, and that when it broke, it would break over the heads of children who had done me no wrong. She had aimed it at him through me. The cruelest threats always are. I looked at the purse on my table for a long moment. Take your silver. I did not rise. And get out of my mother's chair. She took the silver. She did not get out of the chair quickly enough for my liking, but she got out of it. You will regret this, she said at the door. I have a great deal of practice at regret, I said. I will manage one more. But when she was gone, I sat down on the hearthstone, and for the first time since the feathers had started coming, I let myself be afraid. Not of Ingrid, who was only a knife, but of the hand that had aimed her. Because she was right about one thing. A pack was going hungry over a feeling. And if the feeling did not hold, I was not the only one who would pay for it. So I made the same mistake Cedric made at dawn. I decided to reject something to protect myself from being rejected first. I went to the Crossroads Inn that evening, in the long gold light before sunset, and I asked to see the king. And I was brought up to him faster than I had any business being brought, which told me I had been expected at that inn every evening for 8 days. He was standing at the window when I came in, looking out at the hollow lands going gold and then grey below. And he turned, and when he saw me in the doorway, something in his face opened that he did not have time to close. And for one unguarded moment, the iron crown of the north looked simply, helplessly glad. And then his pride caught up, and the wall came back, and I watched him decide to be a king about it. It made what I had come to do much harder. Lift the charter hold, I said. I had rehearsed it on the road. Whatever you were doing in the hollow, stop. Let them have their winter. I go at the thaw as the law allows, and there is no wrong here for you to right. I release you from whatever you think you owe me for standing on a hill while I was unmade. You owe me nothing. Go home, Your Grace. He was quiet. He came across the room and stopped 3 paces away and did not close the distance, and I would understand later that he stopped because his pride would not let him reach for a thing that might step back, and because somewhere in 8 days of feathers he had learned that the choosing had to be left to me. Is that what you want? He stopped, an arm's length away. The thaw, 3 valleys, silver from Ingrid's purse. It is what is wise. That is not what I asked you. The wall did not come down, but something behind it moved. I have spent 9 years doing the wise thing. The wise thing is a high wall and a long reign and a crown no one has ever seen me set down. I was very good at it. I was good at it on that ridge at dawn. I told myself I was passing through, that the bond I felt break across 40 miles of my own territory was no concern of mine, that a proud king does not come down a hill for a voice. He looked at me, and for once the pride was not in it. Then you thanked them. You stood in the frost being unmade, and you thanked them. And I came down the hill, and I have not been able to find my way back up it since. I had a great many wise things prepared to say. I said none of them. Ingrid says you cannot want me, I said instead. It was the last of my resistance, and we both knew it. That a man like you is diverted by a woman like me for a season, and then his pride remembers itself. Ingrid has spent her whole life mistaking pride for strength. They are not the same. I know, because I made the same mistake for 9 years. He took one step, only one, and stopped again. A man whose pride will not let him want anything he might lose is not strong, Bryn. He is only alone with a very good wall. I have been confusing the two since before you were born. You stood in a frost circle and let a pack break you in half, and you thanked them for it, and you did not fold, and I understood on that ridge that I had never once in my life been brave the way you were brave at dawn. My pride has never cost me anything. Yours cost you everything this morning, and you paid it standing up. A breath. I do not want to go home. I want to learn how to do that. I have exactly one teacher, and she is standing in a doorway, telling me to leave. The sun was going down behind him. The hollowlands were going grey. And the rejection that had broken me at dawn had, somewhere across the long gold day, stopped being the largest thing in the room. They will say you were bewitched, I said. The pack, the rival houses, that a rejected Omega put a spell on the Iron Crown and starved a pack to do it. Then let them learn what I learned on the hill. There was no heat in it, only the certainty of a man who has finally found the top of his own wall and discovered it was never as high as he thought. That a king who comes down a hill for the right voice is not bewitched. He is, for the first time, awake. The ghost of the smile finding its way at last. Also, I intend to make Lady Ingrid's purse a matter of record. Offering silver to a woman to release a king from a charter dispute, that is interference in a crown matter, and she has put it in writing in 3 valleys by now, because women like Ingrid cannot resist a written contract. She has handed me the rope, as has Wulfrich, who sold a fated bond for grazing land in front of 40 witnesses, and did not think the crown would mind. I laughed. I could not help it. The proud king, who could not admit he had come down a hill, had apparently understood the politics of the whole affair down to the ground, while I had spent 8 days frightening myself with it. You knew! I am slow about my own pride. I am not slow about my court. There was a silence then, of the kind I had learned to read. The space between us was 3 paces, and it had a weight I could have set down by crossing it, and he would not cross it, because he had decided that, and held to it, and waited. So I crossed it. I will not describe the moment, except to tell you what broke open in me when it came. 21 years of being the quiet healer's girl who took what she was given and was grateful, cracking like frost off a thawing stone, and underneath it, something I had not let myself feel since my mother died. The simple, astonishing relief of being seen all the way down by someone who did not look away. That was the whole of it, a wall I had spent my life building, finding a door in it I had not known was there. I was not breathless. I was, for the first time in a very long while, exactly where I had chosen to be. When I stepped back, the most powerful wolf in the north looked thoroughly undone, and I found I did not mind being the cause of it at all. But the day was not finished with us yet. Ingrid had one knife left. She had not gone 3 valleys with her silver. She had gone to Wulfrich, and Wulfrich, facing a starving winter and a king who would not be moved, had made the oldest, stupidest calculation a frightened alpha can make. If the omega was the cause, remove the omega, and the king's reason goes with her. They came for me at the inn at full dark, 4 hollow wolves, with Cedric at the head of them, sent to take me back to the Packlands, for my own safety until the charter matter is settled, which is the phrase men use when they intend to hold a woman somewhere a king cannot easily reach her and bargain her back for their winter bread. I met them in the inn-yard. The king was inside. I had stepped out to clear my head, and that was the gap they had been waiting for. Cedric caught my arm. "You are coming with us, Bryn. It is for the best. The king will see reason once you are home and quiet." The rejection sickness still lived in my chest. My bond to him had been torn out at dawn, and the wound of it was 8 days raw. And I will tell you the truth. A smaller version of me, the version who had spent 21 years taking what she was given, almost went. It would have been easier. It is always easier. Instead, I planted my feet, and I looked the golden sun of the hollow in the eye, and I said, loud enough for the inn-yard to hear, "You rejected me at dawn in front of the whole pack. You released me from any claim. You said the words yourself. So take your hand off me, Cedric. By your own mouth, I am no concern of yours." His own words, turned in his own hand like a blade he had forgotten he was holding. He faltered. That faltering saved his life, because the inn door had opened, and the Iron Crown of the North was standing in it, and the look on his face was the look the people on the ridge had tried to describe to me, and failed. What happened next happened fast. Cedric let go of my arm. The 4 hollow wolves discovered, all at once, that they were standing in a yard with an alpha king whose pride had finally found a thing worth spending itself on, and that the calculation had gone very badly wrong. There was no fight. There did not need to be. Magnus crossed the yard and put himself between me and the 4 of them. A public thing. A costly thing. The Iron Crown shielding a rejected Omega with his own body in front of witnesses who would carry it to every pack in the Reach. And he said one sentence, very quietly, and the 4 hollow wolves left the yard and did not come back. I never asked him what the sentence was. Some doors are better left shut. But I will tell you what I did, because it matters that I did it and not him. When the hollow wolves had gone and the yard was quiet, and the king turned to me with the wall entirely down at last, I did not let him claim me there. "No," I said. "Not here, not in a yard, in the dark, the way they tried to take me. If you are going to claim me, Magnus, you will do it where they rejected me. In the gathering circle, at dawn, in front of the whole pack that watched me thanked for my own unmaking. I will not be claimed in a corner. I have spent enough of my life in corners." He looked at me for a long moment. "Yes." The word came without hesitation. "That is the right place." And the ghost of the smile became a real one, at last. The first I had seen reach all the way. I should have thought of it. I am told I am slow about these things. So at dawn the next morning, one full day from the dawn that broke me, the hollow pack assembled again in the gathering circle, summoned by the crown, not knowing why, and the Alpha King of the Northern Reach stood on the Alpha Stone where Wulfric had stood the morning before, and he called me forward out of the crowd. I came. I did not come on anyone's arm. I came alone, with my chin level and my hands at my sides, exactly as I had left it the day before, into the circle where I had been unmade. And the Iron Crown of the North bent his knee to me in front of the whole of the hollow pack, and asked, did not take, for the bond his wolf had named on a ridge at dawn, while the world thought no one was watching. I let him wait the length of one breath, not to be cruel, because I had earned the breath, and I intended to take it. Then I gave him my hand, and the bond settled into the empty place where the old one had torn loose. And I will tell you, it did not settle easily. The new bond had to push through the raw place the rejection had left, and for one moment the old wound surged and fought it, cold flooding back into my marrow, the torn place screaming that it had already been broken once and would not be trusted again. I gripped his hand, and I endured it. I chose to endure it. And then the cold broke, the way ice breaks off a thawing stone, all at once and with a sound, and warmth came rushing into the place that had been empty since dawn the day before, and I was, at last, no longer coming apart. The pack made a sound. Not a word, a sound. The collective intake of 100 people watching the order of the world set itself right after they had watched it broken. Wulfric did not keep his pack. The crown does not leave a charter in the hands of an alpha who sold a fated bond for grazing land and then sent 4 wolves to seize a king's chosen mate from an inn-yard in the dark. He was stripped of the Alpha Stone before the month was out, the hollow placed under a steward of the crown's choosing, and the grain charter renewed, generously, for a pack that would, from that winter on, eat better than it ever had under the man who had been so proud of feeding it. Lady Ingrid's written offers of silver caught up with her exactly as Magnus said they would. Interference in a crown matter is not a small crime. She was sent 3 valleys west herself, which, I confess, gave me a small, uncharitable pleasure, since it was the precise distance she had been so eager to send me. And Cedric, the golden son who rejected me at dawn, kept his neck and lost everything else that had ever made him golden. The last I saw of him, he was a ranked wolf, no longer ranked, in a pack that no longer admired him, having traded a fated bond for a tidier arrangement, and ended with neither. I did not gloat. I had spent too many years in corners to enjoy watching anyone learn what they feel like. We were bonded properly at the next full moon, in the northern reach, under a sky thick with stars, and the hollow seems very small and very far away from where I sit now, which is the truth about most of the things that break us. They are enormous until the day they are simply a place you used to live. I keep the hawk's feather still, the first one, the grey-barred one from his collar, that he crouched in the dark to leave on a rejected Omega's doorstep before he had any right to. It sits in a small carved box on the mantel of a room high in the northern reach, with a window that looks out on the ridges where the hawks nest, and on clear mornings I can see him up there sometimes, standing very still, watching the light come up over a territory that is now half mine. He still does that. Stands on hills. Watches. He says it is how he thinks. I have told him it is how he takes a chill, and I still brew the bitter tea for it, and his hands are unclenched now most days, which I am told by people who knew him before is its own small revolution. They rejected me at dawn, in front of everyone, and I held my head up through every second of it, because I thought no one who mattered was watching. Someone was. He came down the hill, and I have never been so glad to have been seen at the worst moment of my life by the one person in the world who understood exactly what it had cost me to stand up straight. So tell me, did you know he was on that ridge before I told you, or did you, like the whole of the Hollow Pack, think no one was watching either? Leave me a note below and tell me where you are listening from tonight, and if you want the rest of these nights, the other kings, the other women, the other dawns that turned out to be the wrong ending after all, the moon and iron icon is where I keep them. Stay warm. I will keep watching the hill for you.